Good evening, Sanbonani. Hello to everyone. Welkom allemaal vanaand saam met ons. Ek is Brian van Orthman Suid-Afrika. Ek is die area bestuurder vir Suid-Afrika. Good morning, good evening, and good morning to some viewers. I'm Brian Nevo from Orthman Africa. Very welcome to you guys all to our second episode of the Strip Conference. I would like Mike to introduce himself, and we can take it from there.
Well, good evening to you over in South Africa. It's now here in the States where I live in Colorado, which is right up against the Rocky Mountains. It is a bright, beautiful morning. We woke up the other morning in the mountains to 8 inches of snow, which was pretty remarkable. But today's promising to be a great day. Brian and I want to bring to you today a little bit different view of what we do with strip till, and to discuss some things that I think would be very appropriate for you as you are going into your winter months and wanting to think about planning how you're going to be able to get ready for your 2021 crop. So we've got a short presentation that we want to touch base on, and also allow time for you to get questions into Brian. And so it's kind of the Brian and Mike show today.
Yeah. Mike, it's great, definitely again, and hopefully we'll get a bit more interesting things coming in the future, and you know, it's looking very exciting. We've had this past week, we've had 14,000 viewers, you know, on our Facebook page, and viewed our the Strip conference. Before I start off with this, I first want to just bring up something pro-agri. Hey, great guys. I just want to say thanks to their sponsorship, especially on promoting, you know, the Strip conference here in Africa and up into Africa as well. So I just want to say thanks to those guys for coming on board with us on the Strip conference. So Mike, yeah, let me get that started. You know, great information that we're going to cover today. I think, you know, there's some, you know, great points I think that we've got here to cover. So I think the first question, obviously, Mike, to cover here is obviously. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the stuff notes here. Soil sampling with growers that's strip till. Mike, what do you see in that? How can we better that, or give the correct information to growers out there?
Well, Brian, so many of the you can switch to the next slide. So many of the growers are looking at the old methodology of how you sample, just like in this slide. You can see that small probe in the bucket and soil sample bags are sampling between where the old stock was of 2020 and where you're going to go in with how you're going to strip till. Our recommendation so often is to sample where you're going to plant and where you're going to strip till, because your root system, both early on and longer into the season, is going to get its nutrition in that area where you've strip tilled, and hopefully where you've placed some pre-plant fertilization. In that, it's also going to spread and go underneath the old root system that was existing from the prior year and gather nutrients that are there or left over. But where you are going to place it demands then where you're going to sample. Now, the next thing as you think about the sampling process, Brian, is at what depths do you want to collect your samples? So often folks are collecting the upper 15 centimeters and throwing it in the bag or in a bucket and going around here and there and very randomly and sampling and throwing that in the bucket and then filling up their bag and labeling it and send it to the lab. And what they're getting is a misconception of what they want to accomplish and how they want to fertilize properly. So soil sampling at specific depths, along with where we want to place the fertilizer and where we want to grow the crop, really makes a whole lot of difference. Our suggestion is to sample the first 10 centimeters and do it in a line, like for instance, as you see in that slide. From there, every 15 to 30 centimeters up the row and then back the row for that first 10 centimeter depth, put it in the bucket, put it in that soil sample, label it as to that depth, and then what you want to have for your analysis. Then next, sample the next 10 centimeters. Same kind of method, up and back through the row where you want to place your nutrition, put that in the bag and send it off. Then lastly, take then from 20 centimeters deep down to 50 centimeters. Sample that near those other places from that depth, put it in the bucket, mix it up, put it in your bag for the amount that you need, and label it and send that off. That will give you a much better look at what you really want to try to accomplish in this first year if you're just going into strip tillage. Because so often in the past, if we've done a lot of broadcast fertilization, we have stratified where we've put phosphorus and potassium. We know that nitrogen and sulfur have moved up and down through the soil profile, but when we've stratified those others, we're not feeding the plant properly. If it remains, which it does, those two elements are very immobile in the soil profile. They're not immobile in the crop, but they're immobile in the soil to speak of. We're not doing a good job of gathering that material that we've placed in the soil. So by the plant, want to make sure that you are feeding that plant appropriately, and that's how you do it. Now, how do you want to do it with the lab? The analysis of those first 20 centimeters, I would suggest that growers look at your NP and your K, and then your zinc, your sulfur, and your other micronutrients. So you're getting a full analysis for those. Don't forget boron. That one's an important one. When you do that, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but it gives you a real good understanding of what you have and what you could expect to obtain from those different depths as that plant grows. Because we can always add nitrogen to it fairly easily. We know it's mobile, but we've got to have a better idea of what we're dealing with. Now, the other thing for some growers that are really into wanting to know what their plant has for potentials is to look at a biological soil sample and find out what might be the families of bacteria that are living in your soils. If you are grazing your aftermath, that's the crop residues that are left over, and your critters are leaving a certain deposit back out there, all of that fecal matter that is there is reintroducing certain amounts of bacteria, and it would be good to find out who, what, how much of those guys are there. Now, that kind of soil sampling, I don't know if that's very oftenly done in South Africa. It's just now starting to become a relevant thing for folks here in the States. But if you want to, as a grower, really want to find out what's there, maybe the suggestion is to sample that and see if there is a lab in South Africa that will give you that analysis. The Haney test, for instance, is a good one to use, and you can get that kit and or you can send those kind of samples in too, because I think more and more labs are using those everywhere across the globe. It all depends upon how you want to look at your crop, but those are some of the things that I think are a great way to make strip tillage and strip tillage fertility work for your growers.
Yeah, no, great, Mike. I think that's great information. I know you guys are a lot more ahead of time, I guess. You know, hey, I'm not a soil agronomist, but you know, all this information details helps a lot. So guys, please, if you have any comments, as jy enige vraag het, stuur dit op die comments. Jy weet, ons sal definitief terugkom na julle toe. So asseblief vra. Ons is hier om julle te help. You know, if you guys have any questions, this is what we're doing the Strip Till conference for. So Mike, I think the next question is which tests we suggest you to ask a laboratory that completes the analysis first year, second year, and third year. I think this is, you know, a great point as well.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up. I feel as though in the first year, in those upper 20 centimeters, you really want to look at full analysis, all the way down in those two different depths. You're going to get a better idea of what your organic component of the soil is. You're looking at what your soils are going to do when they warm up come your next spring and summer, and how that's going to provide nutrition. You're taking a look at that for the instance of, hey, do I have some shortcomings in my micronutrients? I want to look at all of those things. So you're looking at a little bit of an expense. Now, when you soil sample, Brian, I didn't bring this up, but you don't want to just sample in one site in the field. It'd be preferable to look at some of your higher elevation locations in the field, and then some of them low, and then on the side slopes going down into those lows, to separately sample the high spot, the side slope, or what is also noted as a back slope, and then down into the foot slope and into the lower area. Reason is, all of those different soils are going to have different nutritional levels, and this gives you a better idea of whether or not you want to vary your nutrient applications come later, but also to get a better idea if erosion, especially by wind, has really been a nag and a horrible thing for you. You want to find out whether or not that's been a problem. Now, reverting back just a little bit, in those deeper soil samples, so from 200 millimeters on down to 500 millimeters, I would recommend that you only probably look at 3 different things: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, because those tests are not quite as expensive, but also nitrogen is the one that you're looking for specifically to give an idea of whether or not you've had a lot of movement by rainfall or some other form, if it's moved down by soils cracking a lot when it got dry and then you did get a rainfall. But this way, people have an idea of what the upper part is and then later. So I think that probably tells a huge story for what the strip till environment is like, and how we here in the States, but also what we recommend for you guys and gals over in South Africa to consider as a way to really make strip tillage a great advanced system that will produce big things for you in the future.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mike. You still good with this slide, Mike? You want me to move on, or?
Well, I was wondering whether or not do we want to address those other 3 points that are on this slide?
You talking about that one, Mike?
Yes.
Which one?
Well,
yeah.
The reason I bring this up, Brian, is that I know that field in the lower right is a disaster, and if that's really not being able to express it very well, is it? But to consider not only compaction as a problem that we have to deal with, that whether it's by strip tillage or having to use some kind of a subsoiler, it affects how you have nutrition become available, Brian, and what you do when you soil sample. Because as you soil sample and you get into that area where those ruts are and you find that it's very, very dense, what does that do for nutrients? It's really going to slow nutrient release down. And if you do sample from one of those particular areas, note it on your soil sampling bag, and also make sure that the lab knows that, because then when you get that sample back, the analysis from it, it can tell you a story that might really be important. The picture on the left, everybody loves new paint. They like those big machines because they can cover a lot of ground. That large machine there has a lot of weight. We're talking about many tons. That is probably something that can install compaction, especially if you have to put a lot of a front rack of weight on the front of the tractor, and then also in other locations on that tractor to be able to pull those larger width machines. They can install compaction, and so you know that that can be an issue. All of that is an obvious problem here in the States, and I think that I've also mentioned when I've been over in South Africa that compaction is probably the nemesis or the number one enemy of a grower, and recognizing it is very, very important, and both by your nutritional needs and by what you have physically in the soil.
Yeah, Mike, I think, just to go back in the beginning of this whole image and comments that you just brought up is, you brought it, pretty wet fields, and hey, I wish we could have wet fields like that here in Africa. That's, hey, we've had some really good rains this past year, so we were very thankful. So no, this is great. Thanks, Mike. So, Mike, maybe just another question is, I know Orthman US has a research farm, which you are currently busy with right now and doing some research, and hopefully, this is research, to keep going on and on and on. I know you've got a bit of points here that you're busy doing with now. Could you maybe just share exactly what you are doing right now at the moment, and what is your focus at this present stage on that research, the Orthman Research Farm?
Now, thanks for asking that, Brian, because we have here in the States and also in Europe have been asked, what is it that really details compaction and why is it so important to understand it? So our company has started to look at a detailed study of looking at 8 different soil textural types, and we're looking at anything from fine sand all the way to silty clay and silty clay loam. In that, we want to look at 3 different soil tillage types: the conventional tillage, which I've noted with the CVT, and then strip tillage and no tillage, because in the springtime, that's when the very negative effects of compaction are going to show up, both vertically and horizontally, because we know as a a maize crop grows, for instance, it grows with lateral roots that want to grow out to the side from the plant at about a 25-degree angle off of the parallel. In that, those little young roots don't have very much, we'll call it push power. That is going to be something that I want to discuss in a future conference call and with your folks. But what we're finding is that the no-tillage systems that have been going on for 10 to 20 years don't have as much vertical compaction, but they have a lot of the lateral compaction. And when you look at how root develops in a strip till system compared to a no-till, there's an immense difference. Now, is that bad or is it good, or what do we have? We're going to talk about that in the future, and I hope that that whets the appetite of a lot of people. The second point that I wanted to place down there, that once we finish this study, Orthman Manufacturing wants to put together a small booklet or pamphlet, however you want to call that, and explain the results and show pictures and the data in a summary form that could be available to you guys over in South Africa also, so you know what we're looking at. As you look at this slide, I look at compaction at depths from the surface all the way down to right at 400 millimeters. Mm-hmm. And I do it at every 5 centimeter depths using a pocket penetrometer like what you see, or when I get access to some people that have a constant reading penetrometer for vertical development, where I get access to that, and that makes it go a lot faster. And then we're also looking at it, what it looks like from the sides. This will be a really good presentation for what we can do in the future. And I think that it will be informative for what you have over in South Africa, both for those that graze stalks after their harvest, and for those that do not, and those that are no-tillers. Just to give you more information so you can make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, and we're learning every day, Mike, and I'm sure yourself learning every day. So every country is different. We have challenges everywhere, and I think this is obviously one good example of why Orthman has got a what do you want to call it, a field on doing trials to see exactly where can we better ourselves at.
Yes,
and this is exactly one good reason on why we're bringing this Strip Till conference live is to help you guys, is to get that understanding of where can you benefit and where can we help you in the future, going forward with Strip Till. Mike, I think the last question. Yeah, we don't want to keep this too long. Once we're done with all these questions, with all these questions, we'll definitely go over to the customers' questions that they have been posting. Asseblief stuur julle vraag deur op Facebook of YouTube, en ons sal definitief terugkom na julle toe na al hierdie vrae wat ons gaan nou praat oor, en dan as daar enigiets, gee ons 'n lei op ons telefoonnommer in Africa of wherever. So Mike, I think the last question here that we want to look at today, and I think we want to bring this over next week or whenever, is how weed control can be managed with Strip Till. I think that is, some guys' concerns is, how do they manage weed control? To me, it all boils down to how is your farm practices today. I think that's the most important thing. If you're going forward, I think these are the most very important things, is to sit down, think about it. How do you want to manage your farm practicing, especially doing this operation. Mike, what have you experienced in your field in the last 35 years that you've done done this? What have you seen with weed control and that?
Sure, Brian. Well, first off, that we've noticed that unfortunately, here in the States, with so much corn and then soybeans, our growers are having a smaller and smaller window of who's out there weed-wise. What I'm talking about is that there are fewer species, but they are becoming more and more resistant to glyphosate, which has been a herbicide of choice. It works, but those resistant weeds have become more and more of a harsh reality. That how do I take care of those? Crop rotation. That's one of the first things that I believe is important. If you can do that in your entire farm management program, such as putting small grains in there for those that grow grain sorghum, that helps more than just soybeans. And you're looking at those that grow sunflowers. They also bring a different window of opportunity to take care of certain weeds. And then different modes of action in your herbicide selection. I'm not fully aware of, and I'm hoping that your growers in South Africa can give you somewhat of a list of those particular chemicals that are available, and then share those with me. And I'd be glad to address some of those topics in the future, Brian, because what we have here in the States probably is quite a bit different. And growers now are not only using residual herbicides, they're using herbicides that are pre-emergent. Right after they plant, they're putting those on. There's a product here in the States called Acuron, which is incredibly effective. But whether or not you have them, I don't know. It's just that we need to be able to discuss the facts of what you have, and I'd be glad to address some of that. Now, one of the things that all of us, especially those that have got this kind of stuff on top of their head, white hair, we have experienced a particular weed control method that works very effectively, and that's the cultivator. Orthman builds cultivators, and I'm kind of being shamelessly but putting a plug in. There are not very many weeds in the world, from Australia to northern Canada and into Siberia, that you would that can handle a weed, or can handle a cultivator and survive. So cultivators, we're seeing a big resurgence in those here in the United States, and also in a variety of other countries, because glyphosate is not used all over the world, and it has been overused. I admit that, but we can address that issue. And there's some other advantages that some people, especially in the no-till world, would hate me to say this, that a cultivation will help. And but our tools that we've made for you that use 3-point tool mounting work magnificently well, and they can do some great things to help folks out. So that's a kind of a topic that I think we'll talk about in the future.
Yeah, that's good information. Thank you. I appreciate this information that you're sharing with us. And I think with the background that you have, no one can appreciate as much as what you can share with us. And I think this is a very good topic that you just spoke about. Is we need to maybe we can try and get somebody online, hopefully, and discuss about that weed control. What type of chemicals do we have, herbicides and all that type of stuff. Maybe we can get somebody online and just maybe get more in depth about that. You know, and yes, I think that is a big challenge. I think what people have, I guess. But like I say, you know, we here to help people, and this is one good reason, you know, I'm putting this together. So, Mike, I want to get this very quick and short. Let's go to the questions that guys have been asking. There is, sorry, wrong one. Zander. All right, Herman Smallberger. Moet jy grond nat maak voor striptil? So what he means here is, do you need to go and wet your ground before you go and striptil?
So are you asking that they need to do something prior to strip tillage and then put the strip tool in them?
Like irrigating it, or wetting the ground before strip tillage.
There are growers all across the globe that their soils are extremely dry, and in order for strip till to be 90% effective, a pre-irrigation is not a bad thing. And let me give you an example. In the Central Valley of California, which is a low elevation valley, it gets very, very hot. They many times have 50 days in the summer that reach 40 degrees Celsius. It's extremely hot and very, very dry. If they get a rain in the summer, in our summer months, it's a total rarity. They will irrigate prior to, let it sit for 2 to 4 days at the most, and then come in and strip till, and they do an incredible job and place nutrients at that particular time, and then follow that up with their planting. It works really well. These particular growers, for you folks in Africa, they're growing 3 crops a year, and they're dealing with soils with low organic matter, much what you guys have over in South Africa. From what I have seen and observed, and then also seen from soil tests, it mimics a lot of what you have, so that irrigation can be very, very effective.
Yeah, correct. If we've got the water at that time of the season, and the last question, obviously, that same question that he had is, or would you rather strip till after it's wet? So I'm guessing it's in both ways. Mike, I don't know your.
Well, to address that, Brian, for the guys that would consider doing it after, it depends upon what mode of irrigation you've got. If you're irrigating by a center pivot or some kind of an overhead sprinkling device, it's going to work fantastic either way. But if you are irrigating with a flood type system, where you're putting huge amounts of water out onto a field that is very level, then I would irrigate it first, then strip till, due to the fact that can make a huge mess of the field. And if you make a huge mess, guess who's the target of your anger? That's probably me. And I'd rather not have that happen, because I have seen huge failures, and it all turned out bad. So doing it, I think the most appropriate way would be helpful for your grower that's asking that question.
Mike, next question. I know this is something we'll definitely, this is what we're here for, is to get these questions out to us. And, I see this customer, or looks like he works at one of our dealers, where he's talking about they have points that's wearing out quick. They're doing it about 10 to 15 hectares in dry ground and 20 to 30 in wet ground. This is more information, hey, let's find out. Mike, have you seen this?
Yes, we've experienced such things. There are here in the States, there is the capability of, on the tip of a new point that Orthman can sell you, or your dealer from AgFree. There is a small little bar that's has some special kinds of steel in it that they can use a special glue, or they can weld onto that flat point of a new Orthman point, and it will give them many more hectares instead of wearing that point out. Our steel quality, we've come up with a certain metallurgy that will, in most soils that aren't as abrasive as what you evidently are finding in Zambia, will give anywhere from 200 to 1,000, if not 2,000 hectares per point. But when you get into those real very abrasive soils, to what evidently you have in Zambia, boy, I can see what you're up against. So I will look into where I know those little bars of steel. They're about, they're about half of a centimeter thick, Brian, excuse me. And they can be welded or glued onto the flat part of that point, and I'll find out, where they can get those, and I'll get that information to you.
Let's Mike, I think let's keep in mind here as well. This is all comes down to soil type, soil conditions as well. What type of soils do you have? All that type of stuff. So, you can't say one customer will go and he'll do 800 hectares and then the next customer only does 10 to 15 hectares. Hey, soil conditions differ all over the world. But this is information we need to gather. Please contact Orthman so that we can get you and find out what is your ground, or what does your soil conditions look like. We experience and understand more to assist you where we can.
Yes. Yes.
But please get back to us, and if we don't know it, we cannot help you. So but like I said, soil conditions change a lot of things. Mike, we've got another question here from Vion. I want to get through these pretty quick. Time is running out. He's obviously saying, thanks, Mike, for the information. Seems like we need to change the way the companies here in South Africa do soil sampling. So, hey, we're doing some really good homework here. Vion, thank you. Appreciate your comment there. So, next question from Vion. If you look at the cost of herbicide, do I believe the cultivator is coming back as a crucial piece of machinery on every farm? What is your experience on that, Mike?
Well, beyond what we're seeing here in the States and also other countries is that I think the cultivator is always a part of your entire package of solutions, and having the right kind of cultivator to do that is, I think, important to help you take care of weed issues, especially those that are become more and more resistant. Or if you have, like we had here in the United States in the late fall of 2019, we had some incredible windstorms that were very high, 75 miles an hour plus for 6 hours straight. And a lot of the ears of the corn just fell off and onto the ground, and they couldn't harvest them. That created one whale of a big volunteer program that was it become a problem. And I was in a field yesterday that the amount of corn that fell on the ground was half of what he was going to harvest. Just an immense amount of corn. And the population of the volunteer was 50% of what he planted. So you start looking at that becomes an incredible weed problem and a water robbing problem, because those plants are going to steal a lot of water from what you're trying to grow. Sure, this was in a continuous cornfield, but the only way to handle this is going to be cultivation, and we'll never clear all of it out, but that was the prognosis that I gave the grower, and he said, well, I guess I'm going to have to go into the trees and get my cultivator. Going to have to pull it out.
So they parked their cultivators for a while then, I guess.
Yes, they did. And he knows how that works, and he knows what he needs to do. So there he went, because there are very few herbicide selections that are going to kill corn in a cornfield.
Yeah. Mike, I think, this is great information, and I think we need to just maybe spend a bit more time on this. And I'd love to pull somebody in, definitely a grower or a guy from a herbicide company, just to maybe give a bit more information on their end. How can we better these farming practices?
Sure.
Mike, I just once again want to say thank you, for giving this opportunity and, getting information out there and helping growers today. Let's do this again on episode 3. And I just lastly want to thank Pro Agri, for sponsoring on their end and advertising the Striptal conference. And please, guys, join us again next week, or we'll keep you updated when we'll have another live conference. And if there's any other comments, I see there's comments coming in. Mike, Vian, ask another question. What is the thought? Go ahead. Sorry.
Is Vihan looking at inter-row seeding with a cover crop or something of that nature? Is that what he's talking about? It's a little bit tricky to do, especially if you have a lot of residue left over from the prior crop. But we are seeing people have some great luck with even aerial application of a seed while the crop is, especially like corn, when the corn is about thigh high. So it's about that high, a meter high, and coming in with an airplane or a helicopter and flying on seed and getting something to grow in amongst that. There are also some adaptations of taking a high type of old drill and modifying it, putting on a toolbar and seeding in between the row before canopy. And that does that kind of thing. So cover crops, whether they're legumes or other broadleaves or grassy type cover crops, can be interseeded, you bet, and they will work. Now, the seeding rate is tremendously dropped, but it can be a great advantage. It brings in different microbes at different times. It helps worms get stimulated. There's just lots of good advantages that what you're speaking to, Vihan, is excellent.
Perfect. Mike, we got to go.
Okay.
We will be back live again, episode 3. So our conversations have not stopped.
Yeah,
we're going to keep going. We've got a lot of information to share with a lot of people. So, hey, join us once. We're going to try keep going this at once a week. So please keep joining us, and have a great evening. And Mike, it's actually morning to you guys, so have a great morning, and we'll connect again.
Thanks, Brian.